15. Although I'd asked Pulo to handle assigning a master fisherman and an innkeeper, 2 pieces of business remained before I took our collective show on the road. With that in mind, I went to our combat center. The rails surrounding the barracks' wooden practice floor were finely polished and rose high enough that I could drop my forearms and relax a bit as I watched. To the right stood 3 men and 2 women. 4 wore black robes with the hoods crumpled up behind their necks. All were elven, practical for these purposes since they enjoyed a racial trait that increased their mana recovery rate. The 5th wore a white robe with gold trim and was the lone blonde of the bunch. I had spent an extra 20 gold apiece when I summoned the crew to grant them an extra 10 combat levels at birth. At the foundation rank, I'd be able to summon level 5 defenders. When we reached Hamlet, they started at level 10, and all the existing defenders had been promoted. When we upgraded a borough, new summoned combatants started at level 20. The level floor increased by 10 again when we upgraded a township that day, and the magicians would summon at the same levels as the archers and melee troops, 30. But for an extra 20 gold per new summon, I could raise them to level 40. On the left side of the mini-arena stood Amelia, Tsumi, Mashini, and Yakol. Except for the entryway onto the arena floor, which I'd insisted remained clear, a mix of archers and melee fighters formed a circle around the rails as Pulo took up a spot to my left and Giles to my right. I called into the open area. "Everyone understand the rules?" Mashini shook her head.
"Why do they get the healer, but you leave us without?"
"Good question. Let me answer with one of my own. What will you all do in combat if your healer is taken out?" Tsumi turned a hand over.
"I'll start healing."
"Right, but your mana pool is tiny. How long will that last?"
"I'll swig a potion. Play a healing over time tune."
"Okay, then do that during this little test. Any other questions?" The summoned healer in the white robe muttered something under her breath. I shook my head. "Speak up, Syrah. We're all friends here." Her cheeks pinkened.
"I was just wondering why they complain about the lack of a healer when we have no frontline fighters."
"A fine point. Seems to balance things, doesn't it?" Syrah wasn't convinced.
"All due respect, Master MG. It tilts the advantage in their favor."
A balding mage with only a couple twisty curls for hair atop an otherwise bald dome spat.
"The healer thinks they have the advantage. Might want to learn a little about your team before."
I cut him off. "And you have no idea what you're up against. I only spent half your skill points when I summoned you, so you're not at full strength either. Shut it, and let's get serious." Amelia looked across the way at the soft targets in the robes, then drew a bolt from the quiver she'd strung onto one hip, right where I carried mine when I switched to hunter or ranger. I clicked my tongue. "Amelia?" She turned her hungry expression my way.
"Yes, Gemini."
"No ranged attacks for you. Melee only." Her neck craned backward.
"Dude."
Despite the warmth I felt from her adoption of my vernacular, I shook my head. "Daggers only, dear."
"Gah, it's like you want us to lose." "Fine."
Again, this engagement is not about winners and losers. It's about perseverance. Adaptability. Everyone cut the complaining and let's get to work. I leaned toward Pulo and spoke in a low tone. "Summon a new master-at-arms. Spend the gold to get him to level 40.
IMG. We'll see it done."
"What race will take the least shit off people?"
"Orcs. They're edgy. Direct."
"Make it so." Pulo chuckled and his belly rumbled.
IMG.
I raised a hand. "Begin." As party leader, Amelia sent the duel request to the healer on the other side. With a quick nod, she accepted. Yakol raised his great axe, then charged the enemy fighters. Casting bars filled over 2 of the dark-robed magicians' heads. Then a blanket of fire erupted across the Beastmaster's entire body. He howled, but it did nothing to slow him down. I focused on one of the dark casters in my interface.
"Ridley, level 40 Shadow Mage. Upgrades available. You have not selected an advanced combat profession for Ridley. You may choose from the following classes: Black Mage, Shadowmancer, Shadow Sorcerer, Illusionist."
Although combatants bound to me chose their advanced combat professions at level 20, then received specialty classes at 30, defenders didn't receive specialty classes at all. To top it off, they couldn't be assigned ACPs until they were level 40, which was why I paid to have the new group upgraded. I skimmed the list, then assigned a class to Ridley. Since he was in a duel and not engaged in actual combat, I didn't have to wait until the engagement was over. Besides, it was a dirty little trick to play on my party, and that was part of the reason for the exercise. Curveballs.
Are you sure you wish to assign the ACP Black Mage to Ridley?
I skimmed the description a final time. Even though Priya was a black mage and I'd seen the class in action, it made sense to ensure any limitations placed on defenders were realized before I committed.
Some of the strongest shadow magic casters in Enora, Black Mages use powerful spell combinations to devour their enemies. Roll, DPS, armor, cloth, weapons, staves, cudgels, wands, daggers, and offhand weapons like orbs and prisms from the shadow family of magic. Primary attribute, intelligence. Attribute bonus, plus 1% spell accuracy per point spell in intellect. Secondary attribute, wisdom. Spirit ability. This defender is not eligible for spirit abilities. Special abilities, Dark Siphon, Shadow Scythe, Blind, Drain Mana, Ability Pool, Mana. Dark Siphon. The caster calls on the power of shadow to drain the life force from an enemy to replenish their own. Shadow Scythe. The caster summons a blade of dark energy that attacks 3 times in rapid succession. Blind. The caster fills enemies' eyes with black shadow for 7 seconds, blinding them completely. Repeated uses have diminishing returns. Drain Mana. The caster funnels mana out of the enemy's pool to refill their own. For each point drained, 0.75 is granted to the caster.
That'll do, I muttered.
Ridley is now a level 40 Black Mage.
A whistling sound brought my head up in time to catch sight of one of Miss Shitty's new bladed boomerangs as it returned from the rear rank where the healer stood alone. The initial wonderment about whether the Michonne might slice her hands open if she caught the boomerang wrong was swept away when a gap opened in the healer's neck, then blood flowed over her white robe. But the Michonne snatched it upon return with no injuries. Sura the healer retreated to the back rail, throwing up one hand to cast a heal over time spell before gaining enough distance to stay out of melee range. Then she cast a full heal to close the wound. It was a nice move, even though she risked more damage from the bleed effect, because it forced Machini closer to the enemy combatants. The Michonne didn't enjoy the kind of range bowmen did. And the gamble paid off. The newly anointed Black Mage cast Blind, and Machini's eyes were covered by dark fog that penetrated, then turned them black.
Machini Share is blinded.
Giles tapped my right shoulder.
One of them needs crowd control.
I nodded. I know, but let's see how they would perform if it was on cooldown. They're pretty good at fanning out and avoiding Yakol's wide swipes, but Amelia... As soon as I spoke her name, Amelia broke camouflage and slid her dagger into the healer's back. The summoned caster dropped to both knees, and the elf grinned up at me as she crossed the daggers in front of the woman's throat, then slid it wide open. She shoved her boot into the healer's back, kicked her to the ground, then crouched low. Her form adopted the patterns and colors of the world surrounding her as she crept toward another caster.
Mistake, Shenhua.
I eyed Giles. What's that?
Putting an elf into the lineup when you're trying to test your new summons.
You might be right. I cupped my hands to my mouth and shouted, "Defenders, now!" The troops surrounding the floors whipped out swords, then began tapping the rails. Spearmen tapped the ends of their shafts on the floor. The rhythm soon merged to create a steady, syncopated beat. Tsumi raised the flute Latrissa Vane fashioned for her in the wood shop, curled her top lip over the hole, then blew. Her fingers flipped with agility in a quick scale that resonated from low to high. Letters popped over the heads of the other party members.
Plus 10 magic resistance.
I nodded my approval. Nice. Amelia dropped another caster. I sighed. So much for distractions. Giles chuckled.
You know she was the best fighter in her class from 5 years old until she completed the trials, right?
I whipped my head around. The question is, why didn't I know that? I mean, I already know she's badass, but the best among elves, too?
Yes.
Amelia, I shouted. She wheeled. Off the floor. The elven nightmare's shoulders dropped, but she obeyed. I turned my attention to the Beastmaster, whose brutal swing of his axe barely missed the black mage. When the force of his swing brought him in a 360-degree turn, the caster waited until he was out of the attacker's sight, then raised a hand to unleash an instant spell. A glowing black and lilac blade appeared, slitting the back of Yakol's neck. A trained combatant of the best kind, Yakol endured the mitigated pain and completed his spin, but when he raised his axe again, the mage was gone. Ridley had blinked out of existence to reappear at the opposite side of the arena with a comfortable cushion of space between him and the 3 remaining attackers. A second later, he was casting again. A cascading river of purple energy crossed the space, connected with Yakol, then brightened.
Ridley casts Dark Siphon. Yakol, minus 44 HP. Ridley, plus 22 HP. Yakol, minus 44 HP. Ridley, plus 22 HP. Yakol, minus 44 HP. Ridley, plus 22 HP. Yakol, minus 44 HP.
Although Amelia had tipped the scales in her team's favor, pulling her off the floor left the Beastmaster as the lone melee attacker. Since I hadn't let him use his pets because the summoned defenders didn't have a tank, I hadn't expected him to last long, but when my mind put together what I'd just witnessed, I grinned. The Beastmaster's health had dropped to 27%. I elbowed Giles. They surrounded him, took turns drawing his ire with their fire spells, and the black mage blink-tanked him. Blink tanks focused on evasiveness instead of armor. I'd always thought of Destiny as a hybrid between the two. Giles nodded.
Impressive. Although it isn't technically a provoking skill, he definitely drew Yakol's attention.
I waved a dismissive hand. Semantics.
Success is in the details, Shenhua.
Always the teacher, Prince. Time to test the other side. I opened a private chat I'd established prior to the battle.
Private chat. Gemini.
Yakol, do it.
Yakol.
Yes, sir.
The Beastmaster hustled away from the semicircle of mages pressing in on him. Tsumi drew the lute from her back in a blur. She strummed 3 loud chords that bounced off the walls, the tone continuing to resonate long after she finished playing.
Tsumi plays Refreshing Progression, plus 5% HP recovery for 15 seconds. Yakol receives Refreshing Progression, plus 5% HP recovery for 15 seconds. Machini receives Refreshing Progression, plus 5% recovery for 15 seconds. Tsumi receives Refreshing Progression, plus 5% HP recovery for 15 seconds.
As their red health bars ticked up, a silvery wolf scurried in from behind the crowd and through the entryway to join the fray. A spider skittered in its wake. Yakol waved one hand in a circular motion overhead, then swept it toward the black mage. The wolf launched. Caught off guard, Ridley interrupted an attack he'd aimed at the Templar Beastmaster to turn his attention toward the encroaching threat, but the shocked expression on his face told us all what we already knew. The wolf was too fast, and the trick was about to pay off. Giles shook his head in derision.
Their first training session, you bring out the pets. Is this how you establish trust, Shenhua?
Trust will come when we talk afterward and I explain why. Don't worry. He leaned on the rail, cringing as the wolf pounced on its victim. The mage let out a high-pitched yelp as the weight of the beast put him on his back. The spider picked another black-robed target and impaled her with 2 razor claws. Even I flinched when they burst through the caster's back, then exploded through her chest, sending gore splashing onto another of the nearby mages. The final 2 casters dipped to their knees, indicating their surrender. The glowing circles beneath all the combatants' feet faded, and the red markers overhead vanished, indicating the duel was over. The healer who'd been gutted by Amelia's daggers was cast in a golden glow. She was lifted from the floor, rolled in midair, then settled gently onto her sandaled feet. After blinking a few times, she scanned the surrounding crowd in confusion. Yakol's wolf bit the air before Ridley, but could no longer attack since combat mode had ended. Had it been my Porcupunk or another summoned pet, it would have known the fight was over, but something about Beastmaster's companions made them different. The Templar called his animals back to his side. Pulo pushed off the rail and stood tall. Well, tall for Pulo.
What do you think, MG? All black mages?
I shook my head. We're going to split them up so they serve with their own defense teams. Since blind is their only control method and it's limited to single targets, we need to be selective. I plan to have Ridley in one of the western towers and, I pointed toward the female the spider had pursued, Syrah in the north. Until we can summon more, just one each. The other three will be fighting at ground level with their battalions. Giles leaned on the rail.
What will you do with the single healer?
Put her in the cavalry. Get her riding skill up. By the time we've risen it a few ranks, we'll be able to summon 5 more defenders. I turned my attention to Pulo. 2 healers, 3 offensive. Giles twisted his lips to one side.
Why the black mages in the towers?
Longest spellcasting range.
Ah, good thinking.
I pointed at another shadowcaster. Blinda seemed a little more methodical with her casting. I'd usually like that, but it really slowed her down. I think a class with lots of burst damage from instant casting spells for her. Let's see. I focused on the defender mage.
Blinda, level 40 shadow mage. You have not selected an advanced combat profession for this defender. You may select from the following ACPs: Black Mage, Shadowmancer, Shadow Sorcerer, Illusionist.
I perused the third option. The class specialized in summoning mirror images of the caster and other combatants. When mirroring itself, it would create 2 identical attackers to confuse enemies about which one to target, not to mention doling out 3 spells for each one cast. I'd definitely employ one to wreak havoc during engagements when we summoned the next group. What I really liked was how the illusionist's cast times were relatively short when it came to these replications of herself and others. 2 seconds was so quick. It bordered on OP, but the system balanced it out when it came to the elemental spells she'd follow up with. The shortest cast time on those was 3 seconds. 3 seconds was an eternity. And the meteoric bombardment spells took a whopping 7 seconds to cast. But replicating 10 plate-wearing soldiers to confuse and attack our enemies, albeit half the damage per attack, was an easy call.
Do you wish to assign the ACP Illusionist to Blinda?
I did. Golden light flashed around her. Her arms jerked, then she pivoted to face me.
Thank you, Master Gemini. Blinda has called you Master. Daily score, Decini 2, Gemini 0.
The reminder of my AWOL tank took the air out of my sails, but I returned the bow. You're welcome. I hope it serves you well. I strolled onto the floor, waving all the combatants toward me. Once they'd gathered, I began the debrief. Yakol, thanks for your help. Although you'll be moving on to the front to aid the elves, it was kind of you to assist before you leave. The pets were just the distraction I needed. Yakol clapped my shoulder so hard I dipped forward.
My pleasure, Gemini.
A sudden shock ran up my neck resulting from the blow.
-2 HP.
What the hell? Why was he able to hit me that hard? When I'd once pissed Priya off, she'd tried to slap me outside the cave, but her hand stopped short because a system rule mandated that companions couldn't attack players. I thrust a finger at him. Yakol, punch me in the chest. Then I whirled the pointer on the summoned healer. T'Challa, heal me after. Yakol shook his head vociferously.
Nay, I will not assault the goddess's chosen.
Despite my glare, he took 2 steps back, his plate clanking as he went.
Nay.
I rolled my eyes. Amelia? The elf stepped forward, drew back, then punched me so hard my head twisted, and I took a faltering step to right myself.
Amelia cleans your clock. -31 HP.
A flash of golden light warmed my whole body, then the pain receded. I squinted one eye at the elven ranger. I said my chest. After her answering grin, I muttered, "Fucker." My dwarven foreman walked onto the combat floor. "Pulo, when did the rule about companions attacking their masters change?" The dwarf shrugged.
"After you returned from bettering Underlord Kame, Gemini. I thought you knew."
Again, I'd received no update notices. I'd have to use the special channel Caitlin planned to provide to me to contact her about using me as the guinea pig for system messages going forward. If they were releasing in a few days, maybe they'd better make sure shit worked. Jesus. My party, go gear up. We're off for Warrington in 30 minutes. Amelia and the rest of the crew exchanged handshakes with their opponents, then exited the floor. When they were gone, I addressed the casters. You all did a good job, especially considering I only granted one of you an advanced combat profession during battle. In the coming days, we'll be summoning a new master-at-arms for the barracks. I'll have each of you assigned to a squad of defenders, except for T'Challa. The healer raised an eyebrow. You'll be assigned to the cavalry, and your time over the next week will be dedicated to your riding skill. She nodded.
"Thank you."
No prob. I explained what I'd discussed with Giles, then assigned their classes.
Blinda, level 40 illusionist. Kaylin, level 40 black mage. Ridley, level 40 black mage. Syrah, level 40 shadow sorcerer. T'Challa, level 40 white mage.
Satisfied, I strolled out of the barracks with Pulo and Giles. We walked south toward the steps, and I couldn't help but feel encouraged by the sight of my freshly upgraded township and how far we'd come. When we reached the plateau, Pulo turned off at the master's cabin.
"I'll assign the master fisherman and the innkeeper today, MG.
Don't forget the master-at-arms.
Masters-at-arms can be summoned with mined gold or from the Foundation's coffers. Since we spent real gold to summon the scribe and pay for the level increases on the defender mages, I thought I'd wait a day so we could mine more gold instead of depleting resources best used elsewhere."
Oh, that works. I should have been embarrassed. We entered the cave, a label that hardly fit anymore when viewed from the front tunnel or the great room, and Giles stopped me before I could go to my quarters.
"Gemini, I will be returning to the front as soon as your call arrives. I have a mage standing by to tune a portal for us."
I grasped his hand. Good luck, dude. When I'm done in Broomhill and have spoken with Zara, I'll send you a clan chat. We hugged, but before I entered the rear tunnel, I stopped and turned. How is a mage opening a portal if they aren't bound here?
"We have a portable tuning pedestal like those in the receiving room in Warrington."
I didn't know such a thing existed. Giles curved his mouth.
"Should I act surprised, or is my understanding of your ignorance about the world surrounding you apparent?"
Fuck you too, buddy. A stream of white light split the air between us, then expanded, blocking my view of Giles with a vision of a green hillside with canopies flapping in the wind, horses milling about, and slender figures wearing silver plate, their long white hair blowing as they paced back and forth. Giles's voice echoed off the walls.
"May you forever be contented in the light, Gemini Fowler."
"Same to you, Prince Renard." I entered my quarters to find Validas playing a game akin to patty cake with my boy. I sat with him for almost half an hour before gearing up.